social media stuff. I didn't tag you.
That's all right. Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear us and see us. Please do let us know if our audio is too loud or too quiet. Dan, can you say hello so they can hear your level?
Hello, hello.
We should be fine. But if we're not, now's the time to tell us. And if nobody says anything, I'll assume the audio is good. We are back for hopefully, well, what I'm committed to making a weekly installment of the podcast.
I'm zooming myself out a little bit because I don't need to see my face that big.
That's okay. Right, hopefully we've got all the stories here. We're not missing anything, are we? We've got the CES stuff. We're going to talk about Snapdragon X, the Asus Zenbook, which I think was one of our favorite laptops at the event. All of the Lenovo stuff.
I mean, probably missing something. But...
We probably are. We're going to talk about the Surface air quotes event. We're going to talk about X Surface Designer, new Ergo keyboard. That's probably everything. I don't think there's anything else. If there is, I'm sure the chat will let us know. All right, I'm ready to start when you are. Actually, no, we've got a minute.
Yeah,
we should wait.
Yeah. Is my zooming out even working?
I wasn't watching, sorry.
Maybe it's just subtle.
Using AI to create new space around you in real time. Can't zoom out anymore.
Yeah, no, I think it's weird. The zoom isn't changing at all.
Well, I said to you, didn't I, a minute ago? Skype for some reason has cropped in on me, and I don't know how to like the universal setting for zooming in and out is not changing it. I don't. Maybe there's a bug with Skype, which wouldn't surprise me. Why we continue to use this piece of crap software, I don't know. Yes, we'll talk about Ralph Groene moving to Amazon as well. Yeah, okay, I'm ready to start when you're.
All right, let me just get the notes up. All right, I'm now recording. I think it's really loud. All right, 3, 2, 1, clap. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 352 for January 16th, 2025. Hey everyone, Dana Rubino here, joined with Zac Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast, the first of 2025. In fact, I'm surprised I said the date correctly because that's literally pretty much the first time. We'll be going over CES material. I'm going to adjust my mic here. I'm peaking a little bit much on the recording. We'll be talking about a Surface event that's coming up and whether or not we should be excited. I guess we can also hint at some future Surface devices and at least what we think we should expect for those. We'll talk about Microsoft at CES 2025, all in on Windows 11. And we'll also go through some other big news, basically around Lenovo, Dell, and their odd rebranding. The Asus Zenbook A14, which won our best laptop of CES 25, sorry. This new Snapdragon X processor from Qualcomm, not to be confused with the Snapdragon X Plus or X Elite. This is just the X. We'll go over what that means and why it's actually a really big deal. We'll also talk about X Surface Designer joining Panos Panay at Amazon. And then finally, we'll talk about a Microsoft keyboard for some odd reason. Zac, how are you doing right now? And have you fully recovered from CES?
I'm good. I have recovered. Surprisingly, with no illness, at least so far. I think at this point, I'm probably safe. There was a little hint early in the week that I might be getting a cough, but then it went away. So, touch wood, fingers crossed that I don't get sick. Of course, for those who didn't listen to the last episode, this was my first CES in Las Vegas. This was the first time I was there in person. It was an incredible experience. I barely even got time to actually walk the show floor. I did on the very last day before my flight. I walked around there for a little bit before I had to head to the airport, and that was definitely fun. But the rest of it was running around to different meetings and just being on my feet all day. My Fitbit was shocked. I think my Fitbit thought I was a new person because the amount of steps I was getting per day was insane. How are you? Are you recovered?
Yeah, I think so. Not so much mentally, but physically, sure. Yeah, same thing. I think I almost got sick. I did get my flu and COVID vaccines a couple months ago, and I literally think I was getting sick, but I think I fought it off. The only reason I know that is my Aura Ring was showing my heart rate was in the low 60s while sleeping, and it's normally in the low 50s.
Right.
And last I checked, I wasn't doing cocaine before bed, so I'm not really sure, or having a coffee, so I'm not really sure. But one of the effects of COVID is increased heart rate. In fact, my best friend, that's one of the symptoms he had. He was just sick over the Christmas break. So luckily, though, yeah, didn't get sick. I just need some more time off. The Christmas break, though, was nice. I did actually get to relax a bit and do some reading, so that's pretty good. But I guess let's jump into the news. So there was a Surface event that's been announced, and yeah, let's talk about that. When is it? What to expect, and probably why people shouldn't be too excited.
Yeah.
I guess.
So this is one of those. This is the same thing as what they did last year in March. If you remember rightly, Microsoft sort of quietly announced that there was going to be some kind of Surface announcement taking place on a certain date in March. They didn't really post it on socials. I believe they might have talked about it on LinkedIn, but other than that, it was really very much low key. And that's because the hardware being announced there was designed for their commercial customers. It was the first time they were doing a commercial specific event. And that's where they announced the Surface Pro 10 and the Surface Laptop 6, both of those being devices that were only available via Microsoft's commercial channels. We're expecting the same thing here. So Microsoft, again, did a post on LinkedIn on the official Microsoft Surface account announcing that they are planning a major, and I put major in air quotes there, major announcement for Surface for Business. What does this mean? What can we expect? Well, we're not expecting anything super exciting. As far as we're aware, this is simply going to be Surface Laptop 7 and Surface Pro 11 with Intel Lunar Lake. So that's Intel Core Ultra Series 2. Those are the chips that have the NPU that's capable of Copilot Plus stuff, so NPU of 40 plus tops. And that will simply just be bringing those Intel chips into the existing Laptop 7 and Pro 11 chassis. So these would be the replacements for the Pro 10 and Laptop 6, which, for those who don't remember, those were using the older Surface designs with the sort of, squarer screen on the laptop and non-haptic trackpad and stuff. That older design is finally being replaced with the Laptop 7 and Pro 11, this time with Intel Core Ultra Series 2. Intel Lunar Lake specifically. So that's pretty much what we're expecting. Not too much else. I don't think we're going to see any more devices. We're not going to see a new Surface Laptop Studio. I don't think we'll be seeing any new form factors of any kind. This is quite literally just another commercial focused announcement. And it's not even at a dedicated Surface event. It's more just based on what they've said. It's going to be announced during their AI tour in New York. So the AI tour is an event Microsoft has been doing all around the world where they basically just talk about Copilot all the time. And I'm guessing they're going to have a small segment where someone from Surface comes out and goes, hey, we're putting Intel in the Laptop 7 and the Pro 11. And to my knowledge, according to my sources, it will be Laptop 7 and Pro 11 edition, of course. So this won't be Laptop 8 or Pro 12. It will be it's quite literally Intel refreshes of the existing Surface Laptop and Surface Pro with Snapdragon X. And these, to my knowledge, will only be available for commercial customers, just like the last Intel Core Ultra devices were. So right now, it does seem like Microsoft is differentiating via the commercial channel. So if you want Intel, you need to go the commercial channel. If you want consumer, you have to go the Snapdragon channel. And it's going to be interesting to see how they tackle this down the line. If Intel comes out with a better chip, does Microsoft flip that? Who knows? But for now, at least, Microsoft is separating the two by commercial and consumer. ARM is consumer, Intel is commercial, which I know there's going to be a lot of people who aren't a huge fan of that, because for those who don't know, what commercial basically means is the devices come in boring brown boxes that can be recycled. And easy, they're not in the fancy premium packaging that you get with the current Snapdragon powered devices, and you also don't find them at retailers like Amazon and Best Buy and wherever else you buy laptops these days. That which also means you rarely see them on discount. Microsoft will sometimes discount them on the Microsoft Store for business, but it rarely happens. And when they do, it's usually not by it too much. So yeah, if you want the Intel model, you have to sort of buy it full price, which is also going to be more expensive because these devices come with Windows Pro. So that's an additional $100 cost on top of what you'd normally pay. And if you don't need Pro, which most people don't, then that's just an unnecessary spend on top of it.
And I believe they get additional support.
Yeah, that's true. And I believe, I think maybe the warranty is longer, but at least you can apply for an extended warranty for businesses, which allows for, longer protection and stuff. So the devices externally are expected to remain the same, except for a couple of additions I'm hearing will be added to both. which is technically more of a carryover from the Laptop 6 and Pro 10. If you remember, the Pro 11 and the Laptop 7 did not come with the anti-reflective coating that the Laptop 6 and the Pro 10 did, for reasons unknown. And as far as I'm aware, that anti-reflective coating will be coming to the Intel models of the Laptop 7 and Pro 11. So that's a bonus that the Snapdragon powered ones don't seem to get.
That's frustrating.
Yeah, it's really strange. I don't know why that's the case, but it is. And then the other thing is the card reader for the Laptop 6. I believe there'll also be a model of the Laptop 7 with a card reader as well. And then lastly, and I believe I mentioned this in the last episode, I am hearing that Microsoft will offer the Intel versions with 5G in the Surface laptop for the first time. So that won't be available straight away. I believe that's coming later in the year. I'm not entirely sure if it will even be announced at this event later this month, but if it is, it won't be until later this year. But that will be the first time the Surface laptop can be configured with a 5G modem, which I know Dan will be very happy to hear. So yeah, when is this happening? January 30th. I don't know if it's being live streamed. I don't know if if there's going to be any real celebration around this event. I don't expect there to be because this is, like I said, very much commercially focused. Dan, are you excited for these?
Yeah, actually, we're just talking about in a previous call today about the Intel Gen 2 Core Gen 2s and how they're actually really good. They're not like faster necessarily than Gen 1, although they have much better GPUs. But it's really the battery life is actually pretty good on them. Like they do kind of compete with Qualcomm a bit. I think Qualcomm would still argue that their chips are more efficient, and I would defer to that. That said, we're seeing some pretty impressive numbers with the Intel Gen 2 stuff. And, I think the addition of that to Laptop 7 and Pro 11 would actually be pretty good. Whereas previously I'd be like, oh, Intel, okay, the performance will be great on them. They'll generate probably a lot more heat, which I still think is probably the case. These probably do generate more heat. But the battery life was always like dramatically different. I don't think it's going to be as big of a difference, making these pretty solid options without what are for some compromises with the Qualcomm, versions. I would say, you and I talked about this at CES a lot too. The compromises with going with a Snapdragon these days is very little. They keep adding, and apps we keep seeing going more native, ARM64. And so it's really not an issue. I haven't run into an issue with this stuff in ages. There are the occasional like super rare app that someone brings up to me and is like, I've never heard of that, but fair, if like you rely on that. I know there's sometimes issues with printers and drivers too for some people. But for the most part, I think people are really okay with them. That said, if you like to game on the Pro 11, the Intel version is probably going to be a better choice. Although I would still argue that I don't know why you'd do a lot of gaming on the Pro 11, but you can, and you can do it on the Snapdragon X platform too. I would say cloud streaming is probably a better option for those, but not bad. But yeah, I think it's kind of cool. The anti-reflective display stuff, I hope we do see it come to, what we presume would be Surface Pro 12 and Surface Laptop 8. They better. I don't know. I can kind of see them still doing the glossy for one and anti-reflective for the other, with the idea that like, well, people who work, but like it's a dumb thing because there's no compromise. We're not talking about matte displays. Don't forget, Samsung's new laptop, which was announced at CES too, the Samsung Galaxy Pro 5 series, has a really good anti-reflective layer on it. And I imagine it's the same tech that they're using with the S24 series, at least the S24 Ultra, which you and I both agree is like one of the best displays on the market right now, because that display doesn't look like, it really has no reflection on it. It's weird. You get the AMOLED colors, perfect saturation, but there's just like no glare. And it's just such a great experience. Something that the Fold 6 didn't get, which I was a little disappointed at least for the outer display. But so that technology is there. We'll see what Microsoft does, but hearing really good things about the new Snapdragon processors coming
Yeah.
later this year. So, yeah.
I guess I should also mention some of the so you know that this is commercial stuff being announced on January 30th, probably shipping sometime in February, March. What is Microsoft got anything planned for consumers this side of 2025? And I hear the answer is yes. You may recall in the last episode we talked about the possibility of an 11-inch Surface of some kind. At the time, I didn't know fully what it was. I now know what it is. It's actually two devices. It's not a hybrid. It's a laptop and a Pro. Microsoft have chosen, and I'm going to put this in a write-up next week. Microsoft has chosen to introduce smaller variants of the current lineup. So essentially, what we're expecting on the consumer side this spring at some points is a smaller Surface laptops with a screen of maybe 11 or 12 inches, and a smaller Surface Pro with a screen of 11 or 12 inches, somewhere in between there. These devices, to my knowledge, will be powered by Snapdragon X/X Plus, and we'll get to the Snapdragon X later in the show. And these devices will be aimed at consumers. Who knows why they've chosen to go smaller for this wave of device refreshes? I don't know. But of course, these won't replace the existing lineup. So what will essentially happen is when these devices get announced, it will be you can now choose between, on the laptop side, either an 11-inch, a 13.8-inch, or a 15-inch Surface laptop. Same goes for the Surface Pro. You can either configure it with a 13-inch screen or an 11/12-inch screen, whatever they end up making it. The smaller Surface Pro will be super interesting because, as far as I'm aware, they're trying to sort of it's designed to compete with the 11-inch iPad Pro. You know, you have the 13-inch iPad Pro and the 11-inch iPad Pro. Now you will have a 13-inch Surface Pro and an 11-inch Surface Pro, and you can pit them against each other and see which one comes out on top. It is strange that Microsoft is doing an 11-inch tablet again, only because Windows 11 really isn't the best operating system for tablet use. Obviously, Microsoft will probably sell this more as a laptop. I believe they currently sell the Surface Pro as a laptop rather than a tablet, even though it doesn't come with a keyboard in the box. I fully expect the same thing here with the 11-inch Surface Pro. But obviously, there'll also be a smaller keyboard accessory for it. It will still take pen input and all this other stuff. Same story for the laptop, really. As far as I'm aware, these devices are, or at the very least, the smaller Surface laptop will replace the Surface Laptop Go, which currently starts at $799 when it's not on sale. And for that price, that laptop is not a good deal. It comes with a horrible low-resolution display. Well, I say horrible. If you don't like low-resolution screens, then it's horrible. Yeah. Otherwise, it's a fine display. But then it also doesn't have a backlit keyboard, and it also has, it's a mixture of both metal and plastic. This new mini Surface laptop is supposed to be a premium product, so it will be just like the 13-inch laptop, but smaller. So it'll be in an all-metal enclosure with a haptic trackpad, ideally, and a higher resolution touchscreen display. So that would be nice to see. And because of the lower end Snapdragon X and stuff, as far as I'm aware, these are going to be priced in the sort of $800 to $900 price range. So they will undercut the existing line by at least $150, ideally. Obviously, talking about retail prices here, not when things are on sale. On sale prices really skew things a bit here. But strictly speaking, at retail price, these smaller Surface devices will be at least $100 to $150 cheaper than the existing models, which will be cool. And yeah, they're going to be aimed at people who are looking for thin and light devices that they can travel with on the go. I personally don't see the appeal, but maybe 11/12-inch laptops are making a return, and I just haven't seen it coming. I don't think I saw any 12-inch laptops at CES, so maybe Microsoft is trying to kickstart this screen size category once more. I don't know why they'd want to do that, but yeah, I'm hearing those will be the consumer models for this sort of side of 2025, and those will be announced probably, I don't know, in the next couple of months. It won't be on January 30th. January 30th, like I said, is quite simply Intel versions of the Laptop 7 and the Pro 11 that we currently have. These smaller devices will be probably later in the spring.
Part of me wants to make a larger Surface Pro.
Yeah.
It doesn't be super bigger, but like 14.5, maybe 15. But that's too close to the 13.8 where you couldn't have both of them. Like you could have both if you have 13.8, but then also a 16-inch. But then I think that's too big.
Yeah.
Although that'd be a really interesting looking device. They've had to have prototyped something like that. It would give you some interesting options though, because they could jam in a bigger battery on that device, right? Or not, and keep it pretty light depending on what goals they had. The smaller laptops, yeah, you're right. I haven't seen many choices for those. So if it's going to replace Laptop Go, then sure. I don't know. At my age, I'm not sure I really want to go down to smaller screens quite yet. So it's getting a little bit. I am starting to enjoy, the larger stuff out there. But yeah, I don't know. Really kind of interesting stuff.
Yeah,
we'll have to see what they're going to do.
I should mention in regards to the Surface Go, I'm not 100% sure if the smaller Surface Pro replaces Surface Go. I think Surface Go is quite unique in this regard because that device is still available for, the Surface Go 4, that is, which is it's a commercial only product at this point, but you can still configure that with a low end Intel chip, and you can buy that for, I think, $499 or maybe $529, which is significantly lower than $800, which is where the Surface Laptop Go currently is. So if Microsoft can bring, a higher end Surface laptop to that price range, then of course it makes sense to replace Surface Laptop Go. Whereas on the Surface Go side, that's less so. I can't imagine that the smaller Surface Pro will be priced at $500. I think that would be insane. So I think the Surface Go stays, but it might just sort of be delegated as a sort of commercial only product which gets refreshed every now and then, because I have heard that they're working on a 5G Surface Go, but who knows when that will show up, if it will show up, and what chip it runs. It could be ARM, it could be Intel, who knows at this point. But yeah, in the immediate future, expect a smaller Surface Pro, which should be exciting. Right. Well, with that, we can probably move on to our CES. All right, with our CES coverage. So, as we mentioned at the top of the show, both me and Dan were there. Microsoft technically wasn't there, but they did make an announcement, sort of celebrating Windows 11 PC innovation and calling 2025 the year of the Windows 11 PC upgrade. So I thought this was an interesting announcement because, Microsoft sort of has to showcase its interest in CES, even though it hasn't really been at the event in many years. It definitely hasn't announced anything huge at CES for many years. But they published a huge blog post. They sort of highlighting all the sort of key announcements from all the key partners such as AMD, Intel, Nvidia, Qualcomm, as well as their hardware partners such as Asus and Dell and Lenovo and HP. We'll get into all of the highlights throughout the show. But what I really want to talk about here is what Microsoft calls 2020. They're calling 2025 the year of the Copilot Plus PC upgrade, and what they're really doing here is trying to tell people to upgrade. If you're running Windows 10, it's time to move away from that operating system. Microsoft does not want to continue supporting that platform longer than it needs to, and they are currently sticking to their guns of October 14, 2025 as being the cutoff dates for Windows 10. So if you're on a PC running Windows 10 beyond that date, you will no longer be supported with security updates, and you will be at risk of who knows what, any sort of kernel vulnerabilities and stuff that become discovered, unless you either pay for an additional year of security updates on Windows 10, which is $30 per device as far as I'm aware, or you upgrade to Windows 11. Now, a lot of Windows 10 PCs aren't eligible for Windows 11, and so that's why Microsoft is calling 2025 the year of the Copilot Plus upgrade, because they are anticipating that lots of people running Windows 10 PCs that aren't compatible with Windows 11 to go out and buy a new Windows 11 PC, hopefully one that is Copilot Plus capable. And so that's anything running Snapdragon X, Intel Lunar Lake, and AMD Ryzen AI based processors. I believe they even said here, I think they expect 80% of commercial customers to upgrade to a Windows 11 compatible PC by the end of this year, and 70% of consumers, so end users, to do the same by the end of next year. And so if that is true, if Microsoft numbers are accurate there, this will be a huge year for Windows 11. Windows 11 should ideally become the dominant version of Windows throughout the course of this year, which is a huge win for Microsoft. But it also means, I think anyway, and this is how I read this, reading between the lines, they were sort of confirming no Windows 12. I know that's sort of been something people were kind of hoping / theorizing / expecting might make an appearance this year, especially considering that was sort of what was rumored last year before Panos Panay departed. But I think this article here sort of confirms that that's not what they're planning to do. I think this year is going to be a very stable year for Windows 11. They're not going to change it up too much. They're just going to ensure the platform is as stable as possible for people migrating from Windows 10, so that when they get their new Windows 11 PC or they upgrade to Windows 11, they're not or instantly having issues with things, because Microsoft is constantly changing the underlying platform and stuff. I think this year is going to be a very safe year for Windows 11. No huge UX changes, no huge platform changes, just sticking to the status quo, so to speak. Because I think that makes the most sense. If Microsoft wants to get everyone onto Windows 11, it would make no sense to announce Windows 12 this year. That would muddy the waters completely. Like, and now suddenly the marketing changes to upgrade to Windows 12. But then if you want Windows 10, what am I doing here? Why would I even upgrade to Windows 11 at this point? So yeah, I don't think we're going to get Windows 12 this year, which I know is probably going to.
Yeah, they would have to space that out.
Yeah.
I know some people pointed out in comments about, Windows 10 market share still being so high and, Windows 11. In talking to these companies behind the scenes, and this isn't proprietary, this is just kind of obvious, but let me summarize it. There's three big reasons why laptop sales are going to go up in 2025. Not a lot, not like some huge number, probably single digit increases, but still it'll be significant. There's three reasons. One, a lot of companies bought new fleets of laptops for their employees around 2020, 21 during the pandemic. For a lot of people were working from home. Also, it was just refresh and all that kind of stuff. We're coming on 5 years now, and that's typically the refresh cycles for most companies to go buy new laptops. A lot of times the batteries are going dead already on them. Some can be replaced, but still, there's a big, if anyone's been following, what we cover here, 5 years in laptop technology is a big jump, especially now. So a lot has changed. So these are much better laptops, right? A laptop in 2025 is going to get maybe at least twice the battery life of what something in 2020, 21 was going to get. The performance will probably be 2 to 4 times as much. You have much better web cameras, better speakers, better touchpads, better display technology, right? We're seeing AMOLED become much more prevalent, even at lower prices. I will also say that companies like Asus are driving down prices. We'll talk a little bit more of that regarding Snapdragon X later on, but across some of their Zenbook line, prices are coming down this year. And you're also seeing that pressure with other companies. And this you can thank because of the Qualcomm, AMD, Intel race that's going on. But there's also just these companies, most laptops sell between $600 and $800. Granted, enterprise spends a little bit more, but that's the typical range, not the $2,000 one. So you have that refresh cycle. You have Windows 10 support ending, which as a consumer, you may roll your eyes, whatever, I'll go on with my life. But if you're an enterprise and IT, that's a no-go. You're going to have to upgrade for the latest security features on top of everything I just mentioned for that first reason, right? So you're getting that too. The third reason is, believe it or not, AI PCs and NPUs. I know if you're a consumer and you're listening to this podcast, you're probably rolling your eyes at that too. Like, where are the killer apps? What can I really do with it? It's kind of fair, but one of the things that needs to happen is NPUs need to be more prevalent before software companies really start customizing their software. Although Qualcomm right now has on their page, 50 apps that utilize the NPU on their platform that already exist. So more coming out. But when I talk to these companies on enterprise, they're very excited about NPUs and AI because it's going to dramatically improve productivity, basically. That's the whole thing, right? AI is going to give you a lot of shortcuts and help you out in writing stuff and doing presentations. And, Dell is going really heavy into this. And the reason why Dell is going heavy into this is because they talk to their partners and their partners tell them, yeah, we really want to go big on this stuff. So as a consumer, this may not be as big of a deal. Microsoft and their partners will try to convince consumers it is, but for enterprise, it really is kind of a big deal. Mostly not for what can be done today, but what's going to be coming in the next 12 to 16 months with this hardware. So when you combine those three things together, I can tell you companies that told me, yes, we're expecting a pretty a rise in laptop sales this year, next 16 months or so. And then they said, then it will fall back down. It'll go down to its previous kind of level because laptops per se aren't a growth market. It's never, they haven't been for a very long time. But these three things coming together at once will cause, a shakeup with companies buying new hardware. So I think that is going to really kind of put the nail into the, coffin of Windows 10 for at least businesses, less so for consumers, of course. But there'll be more and more reasons to upgrade your laptop, in the coming years. So,
Yeah, and I think that might be why Microsoft is also expecting only 70% of users, end users, so non-commercial customers, to upgrade within the next 2 years, because I think they're expecting just home users to sort of drag their feet a little bit there. Some might pay for the updates, but I think a lot of people just won't, and they'll just stick on to their Windows 10 PC until it breaks, which Microsoft, I guess, is hoping will happen within the next 2 years. And also, even though our Windows 12 probably isn't happening this year, that doesn't mean it can't happen in 2026. And I think once Windows 10 is out of support, Windows 12 makes a lot more sense, because it makes Windows 10 seem even older. And I think just the existence of a Windows 12 might encourage Windows 10 people who are hanging onto that platform to sort of maybe actually finally consider a new PC, because it's like they're now 2 generations out of date. This is getting embarrassing. So, yeah, maybe that will happen.
Giving that little extra space, I think makes sense. Plus the AI story, because whatever Windows 12 is, will be heavily focused on AI, right? At the core level of the operating system. One, it gives them a little bit more space to think about that. Two, it gives the market a little bit more time to, respond to AI and what customers want and where the technology is. So I think that's probably a safe thing, but I guarantee they're probably already, drawing up plans, but giving a little extra space. But yeah, speaking of laptops, let's jump into that since we still got a lot to go through. So of course, Lenovo was there. Lenovo is always, being that they ship the most laptops on the globe by a large margin. I know people think it's Apple, which is always weird. They're like number 4, I think. HP and Dell are the other 2 big ones. But Lenovo, no surprise, CES, sometimes the Mobile World Congress too, always has a bunch of stuff to announce. So I guess we can go through a couple of them. The big one for me was the Yoga 9i, which I forgot which generation they're on now, Gen 10 maybe. So this got a bit of a redesign. I don't have the specs in front of me, although as I'm talking, I'll try to bring those up. But this laptop also, I believe, won an award from us because it is just beautifully designed. It's one of the nicest looking laptops. It rivals, I would say, the Dell XPS line. Like the XPS 14 and stuff like that. We have an article. Lenovo just announced the shiniest laptop I've ever seen in a hot minute, and it's also the first with an under-display camera. Yeah, so this laptop does a lot of cool stuff. If you guys remember, Lenovo pioneered we called it the reverse notch. Apple was putting a notch into the display, which looked terrible. It still looks terrible. Lenovo did the opposite and had the notch extending from the display, which was great. Because 1, it allowed them to put in a really good camera. 2, allowed them to put in Windows Hello for logging in, as well as sensors for detecting your presence. And it acted as a little thing to grab when you're opening the display instead of digging into your nail or something like that. So this was like a really kind of genius design. That said, they were able to really streamline the Yoga. So this new Yoga doesn't have that. It has some of the thinnest bezels I've ever seen. It's a record-breaking 98% screen to body ratio. Folks, we're 2% away from no bezels. This thing is just like, when you just have this on, it's just like pretty crazy looking. It's going to rival where kind of smartphones are. Even like Samsung's new phones is supposed to have even thinner bezels, but it's a gorgeous display. I believe it's 14-inch PureSight Pro OLED, 16:10, 4K resolution, 120 hertz rate, 750 nits peak brightness. And then you get the 100% sRGB, Adobe RGB, and DCI-P3 color gamuts, Dolby Vision, VISTA Display HDR True Black 600, and of course, it's a touch display. This screen is literally everything. The only thing it doesn't do is fold or roll out, but we'll talk about that in a minute. It comes with Intel Core Ultra 7 Gen 2 series, so a 258V chip. Intel Arc graphics. Of course, you get the NPU up to 48 tops, up to 32 gigs of RAM, and a 75 watt hour battery, which I'm just going to throw that out there. I guess 75 watt hour is a pretty sizable chunk, battery. Like that's I would say, if you're looking for a laptop, if you can find one with a battery in the 70 range, that's really good. Now, Dell and a few companies and their bigger 15 and 16-inch laptops can jam in like a 98, 97, or even 99 watt hour. You can't go over that because then technically you can't bring the laptop into the cabin on the airplane. So there are exceptions there, but these are 14-inch laptops. You won't really see that. But 75 watt hour battery is actually a pretty good size. So this laptop has everything. It's gorgeous looking. Oh yeah, and the lid has a new cat eye like 3D sheen. They're calling it like cat eye. They have like weird names for this stuff. It's hard to describe. It's very but let's talk about, I guess, the big one. Let's see if I can find. It'll be the ThinkBook. I don't know where the article is. The ThinkBook 14 with the extendable display. What do you think? Oh yeah, here it is. The ThinkBook Plus Gen 6 14 inch. So it features a 14-inch display that extends to 16.7 inch. Now, this was a concept laptop shown off a year or two ago, and they're actually bringing it to market. So to explain it, I can't really, it's hard to justify it, but like when you see this laptop, you would just think it's a normal 14-inch laptop. And that's really kind of the magic here. You would guess nothing about it. It's like, okay, it's a 14-inch ThinkBook, which is not like their super high. It's like more their kind of mid-range line in some ways. But then, like, I don't know if you hit a button or I forgot you wave your hand. There's a couple of ways to do it. The display will extend up to nearly 17 inches vertically, which then kind of allows you to put two windows stacked on top of each other. And it's pretty wild to see it happen. But that's because, yeah, it's a rollable display technology. So the rest of the display goes into the keyboard area and then gets kind of pulled out. Well, like I said, what's neat about it is no one would know you have this like until you extend the display. It has other things too. It's Intel Core Ultra 7 series, Series 2, of course, up to 32 gigs of RAM, 66 watt hour battery, so a little bit smaller, makes sense. 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, Intel Wi-Fi 7, blah, blah, blah. So that one, I think, also won an award from us just for being obviously a very innovative laptop. Zach, what do you think about that? Do you think that's a gimmick? Do you think that's useful? I'm surprised they brought it to market because Lenovo always shows off concept devices. Like they had one a couple of years, it was last year, Mobile World Congress, so it has a translucent display. And so, I don't expect that coming to market. And then I think they showed this the year before or something like that. But I'm surprised they figured it out. They saw enough interest in it and they're doing it. And I can tell you, to speak with Lenovo and seeing some other stuff, like they're working on some really interesting concepts and ideas for laptops. They kind of always have. They always do a little bit more experimental devices here and there that they know won't necessarily sell well, but they put them out there to be innovative and to get feedback from people to see what works and what doesn't. But I don't know. What do you think about this thing? Is it a gimmick? Is it something you think you would use?
I don't know if it's a gimmick. It's very cool. It does look amazing. I feel sorry for the Lenovo engineering team who have to shoehorn Windows into adapting to screen sizes that can adjust. We know Windows is very not good at that, and so I admire their dedication and work to get that to function while looking nice. I can't tell if it would be a gimmick. I can't say I've ever been in a position where I thought I needed my display to be taller than it was on a 3x2 screen. If it was a 6.9 screen, and there have been many cases where I wish this display was taller. However, the default resolution is what, 16:10 on this, right? This aspect ratio. I can't imagine it's anything shorter than that. So, maybe 16:10 I can see being a bit taller, but this gets ridiculously tall. It's like almost like a portrait sort of smartphone at that point. It is very interesting. I think it's going to be great for people who write long form content. It's going to be great for people who live in Excel or like to scroll on.
I don't know about Excel. Maybe I feel like Excel is more widescreen, which is actually why years ago they were creating super wide displays. If you remember that, was like in the 2010s. Yeah. It was for movies and people who work in Excel. But yeah, I can see what but like, yeah, if you write documents or something like that, or you're doing programming, or if you're working like as a web editor, definitely value there. But also the ability to stack two windows on top of each other to multitask is super cool. But what I think, like I said, I think the magic of this device, and I know they focused a lot on, is the fact like if you just saw it, you wouldn't know it does this. There's nothing about this laptop outside once it extends. It weighs 3.7 pounds, so it's a little bit heavier than your typical 14-inch, but outside of that, I think that's where this technology makes sense, is when you can make a device that does something radical, but you kind of can't tell, right? That used to be the issue too with the 360 two-in-ones. It's a bit of an issue with the foldable stuff, but I can tell you some companies are working to solve that issue too. So I don't know. We'll see how it sells. I'm very excited to try to review it though.
Did they announce a price for it?
Yes, it is not cheap.
I can imagine.
It's $3,499.
That's a lot of money.
I mean, again, well, there's a couple of things here to think of. One, Lenovo always says something like really crazy for the price. And then usually a couple of weeks later, a couple of months later, it'll be like, no, 42% off, and it's like,
yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that's down to like 2,500 at some point or something like that. So the price will come down to, they're not expecting, I don't think, to sell a ton of these things necessarily. No. This is more about getting it out there, trying it out and stuff. So I don't think, like I said, it depends if you're making hardware and your goal is to sell things, like it depends what your expectations are for that device. Like if they're putting out there like, this is it, this is going to be the biggest selling laptop for us 2025, then I would be like, okay, they're going to be in for a big disappointment. But they don't think like that. They have the Yogas I just described are those kind of laptops, right? This is more for the, all right, like they had that laptop a few years ago, the ThinkBook, that had the second display near the keyboard. So I don't know if they haven't followed up with that, right? That wasn't cheap either, but it came out and it was just like, all right, let's see if people like this or find use for it. I think that's great. I think we should see that, more from companies. I joked around with Lenovo because like Dell is the literal opposite of this.
Yeah.
Dell doesn't put out any experimental devices.
Yeah.
They're like, all right, it's been 5 years. Let's redesign our laptops. And then now, to be fair, when they design their laptops, they look so forward thinking that they stay fresh looking for a very long time. But they don't change things year to year, nor do they put out experimental devices or take risks, really. In fact, as we're talking about Lenovo, we can go right, I guess, now into their handhelds. But it's funny because Dell, we have an article up about this. Dell premiered in 2020 their Alienware, I forgot the code name for it, but UFO. It was, yeah. It was their handheld device that ran an Intel chip. The controllers came off and like joined together to form like a real handheld controller that you can then use separate from the display. It had a lot of firsts. It was a pretty big screen on it, but they were obviously thinking about handheld gaming back then, and we're like, all right, when's it going to come out? And it never came out. And now like everyone is releasing handheld gaming, and we asked them about that, and they're like, we don't really think the category is quite ready yet. Also meaning the hardware, the processors, and all that. I kind of get that. It is, I would say, in the gray area at this point. It's not ideal, these chips, but they're way better than it was a couple years ago. It's just surprising that for a category that they almost created or started a conversation on, Dell is like not to be seen. I'm sure they may join at some point under their Alienware brand, which they should, but apparently not this year, which is like surprising. Meanwhile, Lenovo is technically going to have 3, maybe even 4 handhelds for PC gaming. To be fair, we're really talking about 2 devices. It's the same, they just run different operating systems, because that was the other big news here, that Valve announced that its Steam OS is now going to be available to like other OEMs to put on their hardware. Although I think Lenovo has like an exclusive on it for a little while. So Lenovo is releasing their, well, they only showed off the concept for the Lenovo Legion Go 2, which will have a new next-gen AMD mobile processor in there. They adjusted the hardware a lot on that, made it more ergonomic, fixed a lot of things that people wanted. I believe that one's Windows 11, though there were rumors that that may also get SteamOS. I'm not really sure. Then they announced a more exciting one, I would think, which is the Legion Go S. Now, rumors about this device were suggesting that this is going to be like a budget version, and it's not. It absolutely is not. It's still going to cost $729, which is not cheap. The difference is the controllers don't come off, so it's like what Nintendo did here with the Switch, but allow them to create a really ergonomic device, and then handling it, I can tell you this device feels awesome to hold in the hands. They really focused on the triggers. It's got the Hall joysticks. And it's got now a variable refresh display. That was another sore point on the Legion Go, up to, I believe, 120 hertz, so not 140, but still. And it's got oh yeah, they moved the USB ports onto the top. It's got better cooling. It's got the display itself is better in quite a few ways. So that's coming out, but that's going to come out in two flavors. The first comes out with Windows 11. And then it's going to come out in a different color with SteamOS on it. I think that's wild because Zach knows that we've been debating internally which one we're going to get and like which one we think is better. Even though I'm a fan of Windows, I think the SteamOS version is more compelling because you just turn it on and play a video game, whereas the Windows version, a lot more finicky. That said, the Windows version allows you to do a lot more with it. You can install the Epic Game Store. You can install, NVIDIA on there. Like, so you can do all sorts of stuff. And I think that for that demographic, that's awesome to have that Windows version. But I think the SteamOS one will be the mainstream play. And that's kind of how Lenovo's seeing it. What do you think about those announcements?
I think it's bad news for Microsoft. I think it's bad news for Windows. This is probably a conversation we can have another time. But with SteamOS becoming a platform that Valve is licensing to OEMs, that really does put Windows in a tricky spot because it won't be long before SteamOS is something that Valve is marketing to gaming PCs, like full-blown desktop tower PCs. We already know SteamOS has technically a desktop mode which can run Linux apps on it and stuff. Although I believe it's an immutable OS, which means it sort of resets itself every time you restart it. But that's something that can, I think, be easily changed by Valve if they wanted to. The point being that, Windows is dominant right now in the desktop OS space and in the gaming handheld space, at least in regards to, Windows handhelds, obviously. But with SteamOS coming, I think this is the first genuine threat to Windows as a gaming platform that we're going to see. Because what is the layer called? Proton, is it on SteamOS? The tech that emulates or translates Windows games into Linux running games is really good, and it works almost flawlessly in a lot of games. It's not perfect, and there are still some games that it doesn't work with. But that's
anything with anti-cheat can be a problem sometimes.
But that's something that's going to be solved over time, especially as more and more SteamOS powered devices come to market. And if Lenovo's the first, but I don't think they'll be the last. So Microsoft really has an uphill battle here in regards to trying to get Windows to run better on these sort of smaller handheld devices. Because as Dan mentioned, Windows is more finicky. It doesn't have a UI for these devices. And it's an open secret at this point, but Microsoft is working to address that. They're going to be building, whether it be an app or a dedicated shell, I don't know, but they're going to be building an experience. I'm pretty sure they're just going to take what's on the Xbox and bring it to Windows, and that will be the Windows handheld UI. So if you're buying a Windows handheld, it will have like a more dedicated interface for navigating through your games and apps, and you'll obviously be able to switch it into a desktop mode if that's what you want to do, but by default you'll have a much more easier time navigating the interface, and I think that will solve a lot of issues for people. But then there's the whole issue with Steam is what people use to buy games on Windows anyway. And Microsoft doesn't technically mind that. The problem comes when you remove Windows from the equation. Currently Steam is the most popular gaming platform, but that platform exists on top of Windows, and so Microsoft is happy for you to buy a Windows license to use Steam. But with SteamOS, you remove Windows from the equation, Microsoft is suddenly no longer making money in that exchange, and that becomes a problem. And so you will see Microsoft now address this and try to compete with SteamOS, and that's a good thing, I guess, and we can thank Valve for that, because up until now, Microsoft hasn't taken it seriously. Xbox has sort of wanted nothing to do with Windows. I think we're going to see this year Windows and Xbox really come together to sort of protect itself I'm sort of bringing together an editorial right now. Dan is having a great time doing something there.
Sorry, I'm back.
Yeah. Your mic did not mute any of that sound.
Oh, so you heard my dogs?
Yeah.
Me talking about dogs?
Yeah, I was just saying, I think this year we're going to see Windows and Xbox sort of combine forces and come together to protect itself from the competition when it comes to both gaming and non-gaming things. You know, we've got Mac OS and iPad OS doing incredible stuff with there, and Android as well, doing all sorts of incredible stuff, making those platforms more productive as desktop replacements. On the other end, we've got Steam OS and Linux gaming coming from Microsoft's launch in the gaming department as well. Windows needs to start protecting itself and fighting off the competition here, because it's no longer going to be dominant, but just because it can be. Because, you know, I feel like Windows is really in the place it is today is because there was no competition. But I think we now have competition here. You know, if Apple comes out with, say, a MacBook that costs $500-$600, that's bad news for Windows. If Steam OS becomes a popular platform that gaming hardware makers are licensing instead of Windows, that's really bad news for Microsoft and Windows. And so we're going to see Windows and Xbox come together to protect that. And then on the Xbox side, that works as well, because, you know, Xbox versus PlayStation. PlayStation has pretty much won that battle, so Microsoft needs to rethink that strategy there. How about, what if Xbox becomes a platform, and then suddenly, you know, you're now licensing Xbox OS to Lenovo, HP, Dell, and that's what runs on these gaming handhelds, / if they want to build consoles, they can do that too. And so Xbox is going to exist as a platform going forward, and to do that, it needs Windows, vice versa with Windows needing Xbox to survive PC gaming. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting year in regards to that front. But
so I mean, I guess that raises the question, right? We're talking about Windows and needs to be optimized. So on one side, you could say, well, SteamOS going wider, starting with Lenovo here, will light a fire a little bit under Microsoft to start to optimize the operating system a bit more, or a lot more, to, you know, take advantage of this. And we know Phil Spencer's a big fan of these devices. There's been talks they're going to do their own device at some point, presumably when their software is better and ready. But then I guess the question is, do they really need to optimize Windows, or should they try to make an Xbox handheld?
You mean running Xbox OS? Yeah. So it's important to remember that Xbox OS is already Windows. They run the same code base. They're both running version 24H2 as we speak. The only real difference is obviously the shell layer and the permissions and how the OS is sort of laid out on the disk, I guess. On Xbox OS is technically 3 operating systems, so they say. I think one is a virtualized, you know, the game runs in a game OS, which is like its own container. Then there's Hyper-V, and then there's something, I'm misremembering it, but there's technically 3 sort of components to the Xbox OS. But Xbox OS is a significantly more locked down platform compared to both Steam OS and Windows, obviously. And so I think there is a happy middle ground to be found there, because gamers do like to tinker quite often. You know, they do want to jump into game files sometimes and install mods and do all this other stuff. And, you know, some of these gaming handhelds may also be useful as PCs. You may be able to dock them like the Nintendo Switch into a larger display and use them as a desktop if you want to. And so I don't think Xbox OS on its own makes sense here. I think there is a hybrid happy middle ground to be found here. And I do think that will be more Windows desktop than Xbox OS, because for, I think, this to work, it needs to be a more open platform for third-party app stores and stuff. And so I think it makes sense then to start at Windows and sort of just build a dedicated gaming shell around that, versus try to bring up Xbox OS as a more, as a more capable platform, I guess. But hey, maybe I'm completely wrong there. Maybe Microsoft will do it that way because that gives them ultimately more control, but it does mean more work for them in regards to making it more open, because, you know,
right. And also I would say branding.
Yeah.
Right? Because like Xbox Go just kind of like sells itself.
It's true. Yeah. And like I said,
conceptually, it's like, you know, if you own a game that plays on your Xbox, it'll play on this thing, that kind of deal. Like,
yeah,
we've been talking about, you know, this idea of like Xbox games and PC games. They seem to be kind of coming closer and closer together, which I think Microsoft sort of wants. I don't know. Plus, they would have their Game Pass. You know, you can already do Game Pass Ultimate, which gets you to PC games and Xbox games, right? But it'd be kind of cooler if you just had Xbox Game Pass And then with your Go, you can use it on that too, right? And I think the messaging is simpler. But you're right. There's definitely some technical hurdles that would
Yeah.
need to be solved there. But I think, at least from a marketing sense, it would just make more, I think it'd be a better idea. I could just see them selling it a
Yeah.
lot easier
And
conceptually.
I think the way Xbox survives is turning into a platform that Microsoft will license to OEMs. Like, I think the future of Xbox is Lenovo, Dell, HP building an Xbox device, whether that be a console or a handheld or whatever, a laptop, maybe gaming Xbox laptop. But these will be Xbox branded things, or at least there will be like, Lenovo Legion Go with Xbox or powered by Xbox, something like that. The problem with that, of course, is that Microsoft will obviously have to specify a baseline for what it considers to be an Xbox, because the beauty of Xbox and console gaming in general is that, it's one sort of spec, right? Every game runs the same across every single Xbox, and, they're comparable across different console devices such as the PlayStation, Xbox, and whatnot. And so I think Microsoft would at the very least need to set a baseline, just like it did with the Series S, I guess, where, games have to run at least this well on the Series S. They can run better on Series X and, other stuff, but it has to run at least this well on the lowest possible hardware. And so that's something Microsoft will have to specify. I am very curious to see how this will go, because, like I said, I think this is how Xbox survives. It has to become a licensed platform for Microsoft, because at its current rate, it's not going to survive with console sales, dwindling, and Microsoft, has been rumored many times now to be wanting to exit the hardware market here. I don't think they will. I think they always have to have that sort of hero device, but they certainly aren't interested in trying to turn consoles into a viable revenue stream for them. Because, I think they've come out on record many times and said, every console we sell is at a loss, and that's always sort of been the case. And given that they are a distant third place or a distant second place behind PS5, it's something they're never going to win. So the only way to win for Xbox as a platform is to turn it into something that can be licensed. And so that's what I think is going to happen over the next 2 or so years. And yeah, you're right. The Microsoft is rumored to be working on its own Xbox handheld, and I think that will be the hero device to showcase this new, version of the Xbox, which is a platform that can run on all sorts of devices, just like how Surface exists for Windows. Xbox will exist for that going forward.
Yeah, and there's also, I think, there may be the question of pricing too, although I believe these should be priced the same.
That's right. Yeah, they did say that. For Lenovo.
Because at first we were thinking, due to some miscommunicated PR, that there's going to be a big price difference between the two, but I guess it's going to be priced the same. It is weird that even in the meantime, they couldn't just give OEMs a stripped down version of Windows 11. Like, I mean, I think I've had on my Asus one, like Microsoft Teams is loaded on. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Like, do I need that? Like, I get, because, giving the ability to install that stuff if you do want it for some reason, because you could use these things as like a mini PC, right? And I think that's a cool option to have. But that should be opt-in versus, going the other way.
I really do think we're going to see that change. Up until now, Microsoft has been very cautious of doing things like that, because obviously when it comes to Windows, Microsoft views that as, you do buy the license, but technically Microsoft makes most of their money on the services that sit on top of Windows, which is why you do see Teams pre-installed and, the Microsoft 365 app pinned to the start menu and all this other stuff. It's because they want you to subscribe to Microsoft 365. They want you to subscribe to Game Pass. They want you to subscribe to, use Teams and all their services and Office and stuff. But you're right, we're going to, and Microsoft hasn't offered a lighter version of Windows up until now, because obviously I think most people would choose that. And because most people don't use Teams, most people don't use Office, or, most people don't use Edge and this, that, and the other. And so they would want that version of Windows. But Microsoft doesn't want to sell them that, because that's not where they would make most of their money. But
I mean, I think
it has to change.
I mean, they could make restrictions on it, right? Like, not make it a publicly available version,
right?
But rather something OEMs put on handheld gaming, which is a really small segment of the market at this point. Like I get what you're saying, but I'm saying this more as a temporary solution until they figure out, I'm not even sure they need to lower the price. It would make sense to lower the price because you're getting less stuff, but an OEM might just be like, no, give me the light version.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll pay the same licensing fee, but we're more concerned here with optimizing it for performance and having as least bloat as possible. So we're going to choose that. In which
Yeah.
case, you're not losing money.
I'm guessing
So
Microsoft would want to just do it all at once with the new UI and stuff on top, and just be like, "Hey, here is a new additional Windows that is designed for this form factor." Versus, here's this stopgap thing. Because then it just the messaging gets muddled. And then if you bought a Lenovo with the lightweight Windows 11, and then 6 months later they finally do Xbox Windows, and you're like, "Hey, how do I get that version?" It's like, you can't because you didn't buy this. You bought the old thing. Like, it just, I think, becomes muddied. And so I'm guessing they're just waiting for the product, the full sort of vision to be ready, which I'm guessing will be sooner rather than later. Like, I think the Xbox handheld is rumored to be next year alongside the next gen Xbox. And so I'm wondering if maybe this big platform push happens then. They might even announce it this year. I think E3 this year might be the first time they begin talking about it, hinting / teasing that, here's where we're moving with Xbox, with it becoming a platform. We want it to run on this next gen console, but we also want it to run on this next gen handheld, which will also be available from, your favorite hardware makers, etc., etc. It's I think this has to happen especially for Xbox, because otherwise Xbox is doomed, in my opinion. Like, with every Xbox exclusive basically becoming multi-platform, the only way Xbox survives is if it becomes a viable platform for OEMs, because Steam OS is coming. And then what happens to Xbox then? It literally just, they turn into a game publisher. That's not viable, I don't think. They need to take control here. And I think becoming a platform is how they do that.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath on them. And that, I mean, I think they will do a handheld. I don't think you're wrong. I'm not holding my breath that we'll see it teased.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're kind of I feel like they're really behind on this stuff. And this is what annoys me, because this is like, we've all seen this before. They're either too far ahead of the market where nobody gets what they're trying to do, which is like Surface Duo, Neo, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
In Windows Phone itself, although, that's more about the OS design. Or they're super late to the market, which of course was also Windows Phone. But we've also seen it with other categories and all this kind of stuff. Our audience knows that long history. And I feel like, again, we're watching them. We're watching them sort of explain stuff, and it's just, sorry, my microphone just got all screwed up again. They're just behind on everything, and I'm not seeing a lot of movement from them. And it's just, I'm worried that they're going to miss this market and give it to SteamOS, or Valve rather. And to be honest, I almost don't mind that, because I really like Valve and Steam and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, sure, why not? They're kind of better in a lot of ways. I love the Steam store, right? But it just feels like Microsoft's not moving fast enough on this or taking it seriously.
I think so. I do know that Microsoft has been looking into this since 2022 in various different forms. I know Xbox wasn't involved at first. I don't know how recently they jumped on board with this, because I know Phil Spencer probably wasn't super involved originally. But that has changed, obviously. Xbox is now very much involved, and I think both sides, Windows and Xbox, realize that they sort of need each other here to make this work. But Windows has definitely been looking into ways to improve itself on gaming handhelds and just as a gaming platform in general for at least 2.5, 3 years now. So I'm hoping on that front we're further along than maybe we're thinking they are. But yeah, Xbox's involvement is certainly much more recent. I think, I don't know what Xbox sort of stagnated, I think, with Series X was great, but then in the last 5 years, what's really happened with Xbox? They've just sort of bought a bunch of studios and then made it so that they're no longer exclusive to Xbox. Like, what's the plan here? And I think, if we don't see them tease this, because it's easy to tease stuff and be like, hey, here's our vision for Xbox going forward. They can just talk about what they're working on. I don't have to show anything, I guess. But if we don't see anything at E3 this year, I'm guessing the first point we will hear about it is maybe the Game Awards, which is usually in December, so December 2025, because they can't not say anything for another year and a half. June 2026 cannot be the first time we hear about their plans for the next gen Xbox. I just don't think that's feasible. It doesn't make any sense. But I guess maybe Dan's right and I'm wrong here, and I'm being too hopeful.
Just past experience, man.
Yeah.
I just have to warn you, my earbuds. I didn't fully charge, fortunately, before this podcast, so I'm having a little bit audio trouble. Of course, Bluetooth earbuds being the geniuses they are, if my right one dies, I can't use the left one.
Yeah.
So, in which case, Zach, it's going to switch to my speaker audio, and you're just going to have to deal with it. So,
Okay.
And we have a lot to go through yet.
Yeah. Should we move on to Dell?
Yes, let's, because we're way behind on stuff right now. Let's just quickly talk. Dell rebranded its entire PC portfolio, following in the footsteps of HP. This was a very contentious. I was there in New York when they announced this. It was a very contentious announcement, because it's pretty confusing. It's Dell, Dell Pro, Dell Pro Max are the main categories. For consumers, all you need to worry about is Dell. The Pro and the Pro Max are both more commercial devices, although there might be some exceptions there. I'm not really too sure. So so it's like you would have Dell would be the name of the laptop. So a Dell XPS. And I should also mention then there's Premium, Plus, and Base, I think, were the vertical categories. So if like an XPS 14, which XPS is going away. So XPS goes away, but not for a while. This will be a fade in, fade out kind of thing, right? But eventually that laptop could be like Dell Premium 14, and then there would be like a letter and number after it designating it's an Intel and generation, right? That's not very exciting, obviously. People really like the XPS brand, even if they don't necessarily know where it fits into Dell's other brands like Optiplex and Latitude and all this kind of stuff. And for those who don't know, XPS stands for Extreme Performance System. But yeah, so that's kind of okay. So Dell Premium 14, G2 or something like that, right? But then it's like you could also get a Dell Pro Max 14 Premium, like
oh my God.
So, yeah, Dell Pro Max Premium would be like a laptop category. It's just the problem with it. Like I get conceptually what they were trying to do. Mm-hmm. But it's too many words and too many descriptors, right? Well, because it's Pro, it's Pax, it's Medium, it's Premium, it's Plus.
Not only that, they've quite literally stolen what Apple does with the Pro and Pro Max. And Apple's version is way more simple than what Dell's does. So Dell has taken an established branding identity and convoluted it. That's the problem. Because when I first heard this news, I thought they were doing, how Apple does it. So you'd have Dell devices, which are the Inspirons, Dell Pros, which would be the XPSs, and Dell Pro Maxes, which would be the Vostros or whatever, the Latitudes. That was what I thought they were doing. And that, to me, makes sense. Okay, sure. It is a bit kind of weird that they copied Apple word for word there, but sure, I get it. But no, they've just taken the branding and made it way more confusing, because you can now have a standard Dell that's like a Dell Premium that's better than a Dell Pro. It's like, wait,
right?
What? That makes no sense. Yes. And yeah, so this is bad.
And my headphones just died, so we are on speakerphones now.
You still sound okay, so your mic's not swapped, and I guess he can't hear me, so that is what that is.
No, I can hear you.
Oh, you can. Okay, yeah, your mic still sounds okay. So.
No, I know. It's just a recording. You might pick up.
Oh, yeah, that's a pain.
Yeah, I told you. How'd you not think of that?
That's a real pain. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to stitch the master recording together with your recording. It should be fine. But yeah, so I think this is really bad. And so I'm curious, Dan, do you think they will walk this back?
Yeah, I don't know. I can tell you the press did not like it.
No.
When it was announced, there were a lot of questions like, really? Now, Dell claims they did 6 months of market research with this and that this tested very well with people. So who are we kind of to argue with that? But like a lot of people were upset about the XPS name going away.
Yeah, That's a shame.
So HP did this too, but they did like two separate categories. There was OmniBook and EliteBook. OmniBook was for consumer, EliteBook. Actually, sorry, let me back that. Omni was for consumer, Elite was for the commercial.
Yeah.
And then it was OmniBook, OmniDesk, and I forgot what the other category was. It was the all-in-ones. Studio.
Omni Studio, yeah.
Studio. And so then you would have EliteBook, Elite Desk, and Elite Studio. And so those are the major categories. And then they did have still a numbering system. So for Omni, 2, 4, 6, and then I believe it went to X and then Ultra. Whereas the EliteBook was 3, 5, 7, X Ultra, right? So it'd be like an OmniBook 3 would be the laptop. OmniBook 3 14-inch, right, would be the thing, versus an OmniBook 7, which would be a better version. So that kind of matches kind of like the Intel 357 processor range, which people are kind of familiar with. So in a way that kind of makes sense. Then they have the X, and then they have the Ultra, which is kind of a little bit weird. So I'm not saying HP's is perfect either. I get confused where the X and the Ultras, and they get announced, and then you got to throw in maybe a 2-in-1 or a 360 and all this. So now, to be fair to these companies, people are like, just be like Apple. But like Apple has like 4 laptops.
Yeah.
That's it. Oh, sure, they have different processors, but it's 4 laptops. Like Lenovo has hundreds of laptops. Dell has dozens and dozens of laptops. They have Latitudes, Optiplex. They have their the XPS line. They have I'm forgetting all the other ones too, but they have like a bunch of lines, and within those are a bunch of ranges, right? So it is really hard for these companies to simplify their branding. I applaud them for trying. Dell was joking like, we don't like, what is an Optiplex, right? What's a Latitude, right? Like, it's kind of true. The names don't mean really much to people.
Yeah. But I think that's the problem with this.
I feel for them. And I think HP did the best that they kind of could with this. But yeah, Dell's just feels too wordy at the end of the day.
I think.
Will they walk it back? Yeah, I think they might.
Yeah, it's really bad.
But we'll see. So they did announce some Dell Pro laptops. So these are commercial ones. The designs too were kind of boring. They're kind of boring for Dell, I would say. They weren't the most exciting looking devices out there. I don't know. We'll see what happens. What do you think? Do you think they're going to walk it back?
I really don't know. I think Dell sort of comes across as a sort of company that sort of will stick to it, like stubbornly. Oh, you can't hear me? I guess he can't hear me. I'm going to keep talking because the podcast is more important. So I was real quick going to say that I think Dell's issue with the rebrand here is that they are they've taken an established hierarchy, like the Pro and the Pro Max. Like the reason why XPS and Vostro and Latitude worked is because they were sort of abstract, random names. They meant nothing unless you looked into them. Whereas Pro and Pro Max assumes better and best. And that's Apple's fault. Apple did that, and they've quite clearly just stolen Apple's branding there. So it's no surprise that people are confused by this because Apple's made it so simple, and now Dell has taken that same branding and confused it. Like, I think it works with the Omni Studio and the OmniBook and the EliteBook and stuff because, again, it's sort of abstract naming, right? It's like, what does Omni mean? What is it? It doesn't matter, like, because it's not an established hierarchy. So you need to look into it to figure out what it is. Whereas Pro and Pro Max are established. Pro is one level, Pro Max is the best level. That's Apple, which established that. And now Dell's trying to say, that's not what that means. No, it actually means different things here. And so that's why people are confused. And I think had they just done something completely abstract, maybe XPS and Latitude, then, maybe the rebrand wouldn't be so bad. But I think it's quite literally because they went with Pro and Pro Max that it's caused the outrage and the confusion. Any other words, and I think they would have been fine. They could have gone with like maybe even Pro and Elite, so just make it different. Make it be like, so this is our Pro line. You can do Pro Premium. Here's our Elite line. We can do Elite Premium and stuff. And I think that would even make more sense. It's quite literally because they did Pro Max. Pro Max is the thing that makes it sound like an Apple thing, which means, that's the best thing. And so that's where the confusion comes from, I think. And also, you're right. The designs of these laptops, boring. I think we both said at CES that Lenovo is super fun right now. That they are such a cool computer company. The way that they're just experimenting and doing completely wild stuff that Surface would sort of be doing 10 years ago with things like the Surface Book and whatnot. Lenovo to me is the new Surface. They're the ones experimenting with form factors and trying new things, and they're not afraid to do it. And Dell, on the other hand, very boring, very very run of the mill. This is a laptop. It does laptop things. It's boring. It's like, yeah, I'm not even interested. I'm not looking at that. I didn't look at a single Dell laptop.
Perhaps that's, Dell, like I said, has always been doing this. We can point back years ago, even like they had the original Yoga book, I believe it was the little compact computer that almost fit in your jacket. It had the hollow keyboard, it had e-ink and all that kind of stuff. So they've always been experimenting, but you're right. They seem to have ramped it up a little bit more, gone a little bit, and maybe it is because they see a gap there from Microsoft where they can kind of fill. So, but you're right. They seem to be doing kind of the really cool stuff where, Dell definitely isn't. HP kind of is. I think HP is doing some really nice things too.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
Anyway, we'll see what happens with the Dell stuff. We're not going to go over everything with Asus because they had
a lot.
I had a 90-minute presentation just on laptops from them.
Wow.
So, and now that included gaming too, but we'll just cover the big one. The Zenbook A14. So this won our best laptop of CES award. This is the one to watch. Everybody, I can tell you, all the press was really blown away by this device when it was shown off again in December. We got to see this even before CES. It's all we talked about. So what makes this laptop cool is a couple things. One, it's a 14-inch, which is the most used and most desired laptops display size out there, right? That's just market research. So it's got a great display size. It's an OLED display, so it looks really nice. I believe it's only 60 hertz, though I heard they might release like a top tier version with 120 hertz and a higher resolution display because it's based at only full HD. It's made out of aluminum, which is a material that they invented like a year or two ago. It's been in one or two laptops already, but only partially. This is the first laptop where the entire chassis, the entire thing is made out of aluminum, which is a combination of ceramics and aluminum. But they take this material, they put it in water, and they zap it with like an unfathomable amount of electricity, which then creates a plasma and separates the atoms, and then it settles. It's really weird stuff. I can tell you there's a lot of research in material science these days, and this is an example of that. So what you get with this is a couple things. One, it's extremely thin and extremely it's resilient, right? It's a tough material, but it's not going to be heavy. So it's like aluminum but better, right? There's no paint on it. There's no dyeing either, which is also not good for the environment. It's just better. So if you were to scratch this, you wouldn't see like silver below it, right? It's going to be the same kind of color throughout because there's only two colors. There's like a gray and then there's like a beige almost, which sounds not exciting, but they're really kind of cool colors in person. But those are naturally occurring colors by this process, which is kind of neat. So you get that. It's also that it feels nice. It's a textured material, so it's not smooth. It's not sandpaper, but it's like, what I'm saying, it's a little bit rough when you pick it up, but in a nice way. It also doesn't pick up fingerprints, which is really great. But this allows a laptop to be like around, I think it's around 2.2 pounds. It's so light that we all thought, like, when you picked it up, it felt like one of those dummy plastic units, like, oh, so there's actually no innards in this thing, because that's how light it feels. It feels like if you put this in your bag, you just would not notice it's there. Yet it also has a large battery. I believe it's I've got the exact size. It's in the 70s though. I think it might be 74 watt hour or something like that. So it's still got a big battery in it. They didn't like compromise there. Now it's running the new Snapdragon X processor, which we'll just merge into this discussion. So this was announced by Qualcomm. It is still an 8-core chip. It's just the clock speed is a little bit lower, and it doesn't have turbo boost. So there are two turbos with the Snapdragon X Plus and then Elite. There's one where one core can turbo for a short duration. Then there's one that has two cores that can turbo up. This one doesn't have any turbo, right? And the GPU is also not as powerful either. So but it's still a really good performing chip. But the big thing here is like this laptop, and it's got, all your major ports and stuff like that. Um, but this laptop isn't some like super premium thing. It starts at $899, which is crazy. Usually when we're talking about all this like exciting technology and everything, we're going to be like, oh, and it's going to start at like $1,800, or like the rollable one's $3,500. No, this is $899, and it goes up to like $1,299 or something like that. You can get it also with Snapdragon X Plus, and I hear there's a next Elite version coming with that's one with the higher res display, with a 120 refresh really make this thing ideal. But that's why it's a great looking laptop. It's super light. Battery life is going to be like, it's 32 hours of video streaming, which, okay, whatever. But it's 20 hours they're claiming like web usage, like regular laptop is 20 hours. Now, let's say they're fibbing, right? They're over exaggerating the numbers, right? Let's cut off 5 hours from that. And that's a lot to be off, right? So you may only get like 15 hours out of this thing. Like, that's a lot of battery life, right? So you're getting an $899 laptop. It's got a strong NPU. You're still getting the 45 TOPS NPU on this. So it's a full Copilot Plus PC at $899. And you gain this really beautiful display, amazing materials. Like, this is just I'm excited about this laptop. It's pretty hard to get me excited about like an $899 laptop, right? But I think this thing is absolutely killer. I think it's great for the market, right? Because these Snapdragon X chips are also meant to hit even lower, like around $600 laptops, which is good because of that NPU. It's going to get that NPU theoretically into more hands. And the more people have NPUs, the more likely software makers are going to take advantage of it and design their software for it. And so that's what's needed. Historically, we would see like new hardware come out, like either it was Wi-Fi or OLED displays, and it always starts in that top tier, super expensive range, and it'll take a couple of years to trickle down, right? OLED's been out in laptops forever. We're just now seeing it come down below $1,000 laptops for the first time. But now this NPU will be available in really affordable laptops, which is so important for this thing to be successful. But I just thought this is a great laptop. What did you think? Did you ever get to see it in person?
Yes, I had hands-on time with it at CES, and I thought it was gorgeous as well. It's very, very nice to look at. And you're right, there is a Snapdragon X Elite model. That's the one I took a look at CES with the high resolution screen, and that is, I think honestly, if I didn't have a laptop 7, I'd probably be looking to buy this laptop. Now, you mentioned the battery. It's a 70 watt-hour battery. Now, for comparison, the Surface Laptop 7 13-inch has a 54 watt-hour battery.
Wow.
So that's a huge increase in battery size. Now, it does come at the cost of one key thing that I love on laptops, and I know Dan does, and that is a haptic trackpad. We asked Asus this, and they said, oh, well, that's because we fit a bigger battery. And the problem with the haptic trackpad is it requires a lot of height inside the laptop to actually make that function, because obviously you've got to put the vibration motor underneath and stuff to make that actually feel like a click. As a result of that, oftentimes OEMs will put a smaller battery in to make room for that haptic trackpad. And Asus here said they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to compromise on battery. So it is a traditional die-board trackpad. It's a lovely trackpad. It's precision. It's very large. It feels great to click on and stuff either way. But that is why you have such a big battery in there, is because they don't have haptic trackpad. And honestly, that's the only real negative for me. Like I said, the high resolution is 120 hertz screen, how thin and light it is, how premium it feels. The whole thing is gorgeous. And I really love how it's called the Zenbook A14, which looks like air.
Yeah, right. So I wrote this in the article. It originally was going to be called the Zenbook Air 14.
Oh, really?
No, it was like 100%. They were naming it that. Yeah. But their lawyer stepped in and said, nah, we'd rather you didn't.
Right.
So now it's called the Zenbook A14. But yes, it was originally going to be called Zenbook Air, which makes total sense when you pick it up. The thing is, it's unlike any other laptop.
It's so light. It defies physics. It's honest. I was holding it like, this has to be a prop. It can't be a real laptop. But no, it was a fully functional laptop, and that is amazing.
Yeah, and at $899, and it will be sold at Best Buy. Actually, what's funny here, and what's kind of weird, the $899 version actually ships with Snapdragon X Plus.
Right.
but the $1,099 version Snapdragon X.
Why? Is it more
I
storage?
forgot the exact reason. There's because I think they jam. I think the $1,099 version has 32 gigs of RAM in it.
Well, yeah, okay, that would make sense. But that is stupid. Why would they do it that
And we're
way?
not talking, but to be fair, this is the lowest end Snapdragon X Plus. The only difference is a 200 megahertz clock difference and a single core turbo boost, I believe. But yeah, so the 899 version, in a way, is kind of better. Also, don't forget, this is a Snapdragon laptop in
Hmm.
Copilot Plus. So this has 16 gigs of RAM at
Yeah,
899,
250
right?
gig,
This is
six
something always
storage.
people kind of complain about.
Yeah.
Like this is, I hate to say like an Apple killer, but this thing is really like an Apple MacBook Air killer.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it sells. And my dogs are play fighting. Guys, yeah.
Yeah, no, the Zenbook A14 is definitely. Actually, I need to call it the Zenbook Air. The Zenbook A14 is really, really one of the highlights for CES for me. I was very taken aback by it when I first saw it. You mentioned the Snapdragon X there in your discussion. Anyways, is there anything more you want to say about it, or have you sort of covered the bases?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Hopefully, we'll be getting a review for it. Like I said, the 899 version though will be in Best Buy not until March, so we got some time yet for it. But yeah, you'll be able to walk into the store, check it out yourself, and buy it. I think that's critical for distribution in the United States. And then I think you'll be able to order versions online if you want different kind of configurations. But yeah, Asus company to watch. They've been doing some great stuff lately.
Yeah.
We talked about Snapdragon X. I think this is a great move. Like as I said, $600 to $800 is the range that most laptops are sold at. That's going to put a lot of pressure on Intel and AMD now. These are going to perform better than those chips and get you way better battery life, right? So that even people who don't have a lot of money can start to enjoy the benefits of this technology. I think that's great. Let's shift to Ralph Grain, ex-designer Surface Devices.
Yep.
Came out of retirement to join Panos at Amazon. So I'll just quickly cover this because I've known Ralph for many years. I used to always run into him at the Surface events. He is the guy that, designs those devices. He's German. I don't know much about his style. I would say it's brutalist, kind of like he really kind of goes for these strong edges, strong defining features. I think you can really see that in the Surface, this Surface Book and the what's even the new one called? Oh my God, I forgot the name now. So the Laptop Studio. Sorry, the Laptop Studio. It's always such a weird name. But the Surface Laptop Studio especially has this kind of like really distinctive design. Some people hate it. I love it. I think it looks great. But so he's been with them forever. He did, of course, the Duo and Neo and all this. He's involved. He oversees everything with design. I mean, really talented guy. Really gave Microsoft that, design, their own design language. So Panos Panay leaves Microsoft shortly after Ralph Grain retires from Microsoft. And it's like, okay. And now it's like 8 months later, Ralph Grain comes out of retirement, is going to go work with Amazon with Panos, right? Yeah. Panos was known to have a very tight retinue of people around him. Steve Batchy, I've got to pronounce his last name. He's a research scientist at Microsoft, also works on a lot of the display and pen technologies, also super close with those guys. Doesn't surprise me that he's going to go work with Panos at Amazon. Because sorry, dog, you gotta move that. Anyway, sorry, dog got caught up in a cable. It doesn't surprise me that he's going to Amazon to work with Panos. They're good friends. They obviously work very well together. I think it's kind of funny too, because Amazon, okay, they got the Kindles, they have the Echoes, they have some devices, but they're not really considered to be the most exciting stuff in the world. We're joking that, of course,
it's often
you're going to do a dual screen Kindle.
Yeah, it's like low end devices they specialize in, which is very much not Panos or Ralph's forte. So I find it very interesting that Ralph came out of retirement for this. Like you said, he had retired. He was basically done. Though I don't think he was of age of retirement. I don't know how old he is, but I don't think he was. I don't think he's pushing 70. I don't think he's anywhere near there. So I think he made his money at Microsoft and thought, I'm sort of done here. I don't need to work anymore, and he retired. And then Panos sent him an email recently. It was like, "Hey, we're working on something big. Do you want to be part of it?" That's what I think happened, right? Because surely Amazon.
57.
It
is
yeah,
57.
I don't think he's,
Yeah, it's a few years short of when most people.
Yeah.
Since 2015, he has been head of industrial design, Microsoft device.
That's right. Yeah. I think honestly, I think this suggests that Amazon is working on something quite big here. I think maybe they're working on
Good.
a family of
Maybe
stuff.
another phone.
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to make a phone. I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to make a laptop. I mean, I don't know what it would run. I don't know anything about their platform and stuff. I know they have Fire OS, which is sort of what runs on their Fire tablets, and I think Kindle as well. Maybe that's Kindle OS. I don't really know. But I'm sure that they're working on a family of hardware products that new under the panel's leadership there. And I'm wondering if it would be premium stuff, would it be cheap stuff? Who knows? But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're working on all sorts, including wearables. I think, especially with Amazon and Alexa, I don't see why they wouldn't also be working on wearable tech and other things as well. So I think I also think that they have a lot more free reign at Amazon versus Microsoft, where they were sort of very much limited to sensible devices towards the end there, which is the reason why panels left, is because the leadership team said you need to start making products that make money. You can't be faffing around with dual screen laptops and Android phones, because none of it makes money for us, and so that's why he left. And I think at Amazon he's been given a blank check to go nuts, and that's probably what will
be fun to watch to see how Amazon devices changes over the next couple of years, if we start to notice ooh, they're getting really kind of cool looking kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a huge Kindle fan, right? I use my Kindle every day. You see with me, every time I go to these events, I take it. I have the Kindle Scribe. I use it especially for taking notes. I absolutely love it. I want to kind of get the new version, the Gen 2. Not because I need it. I just want it. If it's slightly better, cool. I don't mind upgrading devices that I really, really love just for slightly better. To me, that's fine. But I don't go anywhere without my Kindle. I don't know how it could get better or better looking, right? It's not something. In fact, Kindle is kind of something you want the hardware really to fade into the background when you're using it. You don't want to be looking at the hardware. You're supposed to be reading, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess I could make thinner bezels.
I do actually genuinely think a dual screen Kindle makes sense. I think
it doesn't. It is the worst idea I've ever heard.
Why?
Because the whole beauty of a Kindle is you can use it one-handed.
You can still use a 360-degree folding.
Why do you need 2 pages?
Because a book has 2 pages anyway.
Only because it can't be one.
You can, well, yeah, it depends on the book, I guess. You're right. But you can fold, if it was literally a duo, you can still hold it in one hand. You just got to fold all the way around. That's sorted.
I think it makes sense with a duo because you could multitask as a computer, run 2 apps side by side. You don't need to necessarily.
But you can use one screen too.
Right.
There you go. That's a Kindle right there. That's just a small Kindle.
What's the benefit of having? The only benefit I can think of 2 screens is one has your book on it, and the other one is like a notepad.
Which that is 100% a feature they're going to build into this device. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can kind of see, and I'm not sure I necessarily love it. Don't forget, that's going to add weight to the device, make it thicker and all this kind of stuff, which again gets away from the point of Kindle.
Isn't the Duo 1 lighter than some Kindles? I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, but a Kindle Scribe is big.
Sure, you're right. Yeah, that's right. Listen, I'm not saying it makes perfect sense. I'm saying it's going to happen.
It would be funny. All right, let's quickly wrap up. I don't know if there's a new Ergo keyboard from Encase by Microsoft.
I only included this because it is interesting, because it is technically a Microsoft design thing, although it never shipped under Microsoft's name. If you remember back when Microsoft killed off its PC accessories line, this was a victim among that. It was a keyboard that they were almost ready to ship, but it never got out the gate because the entire line of accessories was cancelled. Then Encase stepped in and sort of said, we're going to resell Microsoft's accessories under our own brand. And this is one of the designs they were given. It was basically the last Microsoft designed Ergo keyboard before things got cancelled. So it's called the Ergo something or other keyboard from Encase.
Compact ergonomic keyboard.
That's what it's called, and it looks really nice. It's it's very much Microsoft design language, very surfacey and stuff. It's basically like the old Surface ergonomic keyboard, but without the number pad and in black. And so
Okay, that's why I was wondering what's the actual difference here, because they've been doing ergonomic keyboards like this for years.
Yep, and it's quite literally, it just doesn't have a number pad. That's why it's compact, because it's less space on the desk. And it also has a Copilot key, which is obviously very important and the reason why you should buy this. Yes, that's basically it's only interesting to me because it was basically the last Microsoft designed ergo keyboard. Someone in the chat earlier was saying, I feel like the in-case designs are very dated. That's the point. A lot of Microsoft's accessories have a loyal following. It might be a small loyal following, but they do have a loyal following of people who love those older ergonomic keyboards, those older designs, especially things like the IntelliMouse. And in-case wants to basically just resell those as is, because there are people who will buy them. There are people who have sort of been using the same keyboard design for 25 years and they don't want to change it. And so in-case is stepping in there to sort of save the day to manufacture new models of those older designs. And so, yeah, that's what we're seeing here. And this new compact ergo keyboard is the only, to my knowledge, new keyboard we're going to see from the in-case design by Microsoft line. All the others will be reselling of the older designs that we already sort of had seen ship under the Microsoft brand. But yeah, that's all I wanted to mention. I think it's $130, and it's not so yet, but it will be soon.
It's $120,
$120, not $130. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going back to my review 2018 of the or 2017 of the Surface ergonomic keyboard. Yeah, you're right. That has a number pad on it. It also had the Alcantara, which felt great, but did get dirty after a while. There was also a bug where, because it's wireless and Bluetooth, it wouldn't wake the PC when you would hit the keys, and I don't know why that was. So hopefully that's fixed here. I will say I really like their ergonomic keyboards.
Mm-hmm.
This is, to me, better without a number pad.
I agree.
So I'm kind of excited about that, and I might want to try it. I guarantee, though, it doesn't have a backlit.
Nope.
Which is still annoying. I get it can hurt battery life, but like Razer makes wireless keyboards with full RGB on it, so it's like not like they could do it, right?
Yeah.
Or they could have made it rechargeable or something like that. But yeah, I wonder what Bluetooth version it has.
It's 4.2, I believe.
Mentions compatibility. Bluetooth 4.0 or higher.
Oh, 4.0.
That's something. I don't feel like they're using a new version of Bluetooth on it, which you probably don't necessarily need, but would be kind of nice. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it only comes in black.
Yeah.
Oh, well. I might pick that up at some point. We'll see. Maybe I'll just try to get Microsoft to send me one if they can. All right. I think that does it for the podcast. It's a pretty long one for us, although we're trying to make up, I guess, for all the CES stuff. There's a lot more to cover from CES. We'll probably talk about it over the coming weeks, especially as these devices, become available. We do have our Best of CES awards that we gave out. If you just type Best Awards CES 2025 on Windows Central, you should be able to find it. So that's everything where we just thought was really kind of the best out there. There should be, I think, 15 winners. But yeah, so we'll cover that. Hopefully we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Sure. Mobile World Congress comes up in February. I believe it's the end of February again. Not sure if there's going to be much happening there, but possibly. I still think it's going to be a big year, though, for PC. Lots of interesting announcements still to be had yet. So we'll be making sure to cover that, especially when it happens. We'll turn it over now to the audience to have some Q&A with them, but we're not going to record that part here for the Audible podcast. But you can join us live when we do these on our YouTube channel and join in the conversations there. Otherwise, follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky and everything else, Daniel_Rubino. And you can follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN as well on Twitter and Blue Sky and all those kind of things as well. Thanks for joining, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. If you have any questions, now's the time to put them in the chat. We'll hang around for a little while and try our best to answer them. Also, apologies for the coughing towards the end there. I mentioned at the start of the show that I was fine. Suddenly I've got a tickly cough and I can't get rid of it. So, yes. Back to weekly now, right? Yes, this will be every week. Dan may not be here every week, but I definitely will be, and I'll have a rotating cast of people from Windows Central and indeed other publications should they wish to join. Sometimes it would just be me if I can't find anyone, which would be sad, but it is what it is. And yeah, but it will definitely be every week on Thursdays at 7 p.m. The time may move around a little bit, but obviously we'll tweet about it when the show's going live and stuff. So yeah. Question: do you expect Snapdragon X2 this year or 2026? And do you think the next Surface Laptop Studio will have Snapdragon? Dan, I think the first part of this question is for you.
Yes, we expect it later this year. I think it'll be here in time for the holiday season. But yeah, stay tuned for that. There'll definitely be more news of it this year. I would say Qualcomm's been better with announcing stuff and then releasing it. Because that's historically been an issue. It's like, here's a new chip. It'll be available in like 6 months.
Yeah.
But like Snapdragon X, they just announced, and technically it's available now, although some of the devices haven't gone sale, but they will in literally the coming weeks, right? Which is how everyone else, Intel and AMD, do things too. So I guess part of this will depend upon that, how far from the announcements to market they're going to be on this stuff. I think, though, it'll be within 2 months around there. But you will see. But yeah, you will hear more about it. I'm hearing very good things about it. In fact, I'll probably have some news on this, maybe hopefully tomorrow, if I can find the time.
And then the second part of the question, do you think the next Surface Laptop Studio will have Snapdragon? So when the Cadmus stuff first began development internally at Microsoft, I believe the goal was to introduce ARM to every Surface product. If they're selling a Surface, it should have an ARM variant. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the next Surface Laptop Studio has a Snapdragon variant. But whether or not, how that goes in regards to the dedicated GPU and stuff is obviously a mystery. So I think what we'll probably see, if this does happen, is the Snapdragon will be in the sort of entry-level models without the dedicated GPU. And then if you want a dedicated GPU, you'd have to move to an Intel or AMD chip, whatever they end up going with. Because we know Lunar Lake doesn't support dedicated graphics cards, so they will need something else. And it could be Arrow Lake, even though it technically doesn't have an NPU of 40 plus DOPS. Microsoft did work with Intel in the past to add an NPU to the 13th gen Intel in that laptop, Studio 2. I don't see why they couldn't do the same thing here with Arrow Lake and make and add a more beefy NPU there as well as a GPU. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a Snapdragon laptop studio at some point.
Yeah.
Do you think Windows 11 2025 update will be an EKB on OS swap? Yeah, I think it'll be an EKB. I think it would be quite surprising if it ends up being an OS swap, because an OS swap implies a platform update, and I don't expect there to be a platform update this year. Do you see Surface becoming something similar to Nexus, where each version is developed by a different partner like Lenovo, HP, or Dell? No, I don't. Microsoft will sooner kill the Surface line than do that. The point of Surface is to sort of be a hero device. It's supposed to encourage OEMs to build products like the Surface. So it would make no sense to reach out to OEMs to partner and build those devices. Microsoft is supposed to sort of exist in its own little bubble, I guess. And, Google did try Nexus and it worked for them for a little bit, but then they ended up bringing it in-house and building their own Pixel devices anyway. I think, Microsoft just cut out that first part and just went straight into building in-house. And I don't see them doing it backwards. I don't think they're going to go third party. So Lunar Lake does not support dedicated GPUs. Let me know if you can find a Lunar Lake laptop with a dedicated GPU. I bet you can't. The reason for it is the PCIe lanes, as far as I'm aware. I looked into this, and I believe there just isn't enough PCIe lanes on Lunar Lake currently. And so, yeah, you won't find a Lunar Lake laptop with a dedicated GPU. And by dedicated GPU, I mean like, an NVIDIA or an AMD GPU of some kind. Lunar Lake has integrated graphics, or I think maybe Intel Arc, but I guess technically that's also integrated on a laptop. So yeah, you won't find NVIDIA or AMD in Lunar Lake laptops. But again, that Microsoft may be able to work with Intel to bring something to market that can support that. But at least currently, there are no laptops on the market with dedicated GPU and Intel Lunar Lake.
Lunar Lake does not support a dedicated GPU. Yeah, right.
I just answered that.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Lunar Lake is weird. Intel's new chips they're like nearly perfect, and then they'll have like one thing that's missing. That's kind of weird. Like I think they also don't support secondary displays directly off the chip. So when Asus announced the refresh to their dual screen Zenbook, they had to use Arrow Lake because Lunar Lake doesn't support the second display that they needed, which is just so bizarre.
Yeah.
I thought it's going to be a huge difference, but still. What do you think is the enterprise play of Microsoft with Xbox? None? I don't see a reason they haven't spun off the business. I mean, it makes money.
It's their strongest consumer brand. It would be crazy for them to spin that off.
Yeah, I mean, what's the argument for spinning it off outside of like it doesn't? I mean, just because it doesn't necessarily fit in some with the other, like they are going to put AI into it with Copilot because AI has a huge potential with gaming, including just simple things as like, oh, you played this game for this many hours and you like these kind of games. Here are some other games that are very similar to it. That stuff kind of already exists. We get those recommendations already, but with AI, they could be greatly enhanced. There's also AI coming to, within video games that Microsoft's working on. They showed with Minecraft before where you can have AI to the side of it and ask it, hey, how do I craft this? And it'll explain it to you in real time as you're playing the game. So there's a lot of potential for mixing in their AI stuff into Xbox, just like, it was announced that LG and Samsung are putting a version of Copilot into their TVs for similar reasons. So I don't see a reason for them to spin it off either. It's like, okay, why? Did they need money? Like, they have a lot of money. They don't need to. And they just went through this process of buying Blizzard. So it's like, like, why?
Yeah, all of the studio acquisitions, I think, cement Xbox as being very much a part of Xbox for the a part of Microsoft for the foreseeable future. It would make no sense to spend over $100 billion on acquisitions and then sell off Xbox because they won't sell off Xbox for $100 billion. They just won't. And so, yeah, they're going to hang on to it. And I think that, I'm sure that some report from earlier this week from the information did suggest that in 2020 or 2021. Microsoft did consider shutting down or selling off Xbox. And the reason that didn't happen is because of Game Pass and xCloud, which was the big,
I also think, I remember Jez saying that actually never.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's probably not true. But if there is even a hint of truth to that, the reason why it didn't happen is because Phil Spencer doubled down on xCloud and Game Pass. This idea of making money via Xbox without selling. Because, we've said it before, Xbox is console hardware, sells at a loss. Microsoft doesn't make money on hardware. They make money entirely on the software side of things. And so Game Pass and whatnot is supposed to be that sort of pathway to more revenue for Xbox. And, who knows if it's working for them. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I don't think Xbox is going away anytime soon.
For the record, Jez Corden says that Satya never considered shutting down or selling off Xbox.
Yet.
So, yet, right. Yeah, I think that story was kind of blown out of proportion. And we do know, and there will be news more on this coming up, cloud is doing very well for them. Cloud gaming is turning into another big business. Don't forget also, in terms of money, you probably could have made this argument back when it was just you bought an Xbox and then you went to Best Buy or whatever and bought a physical game. And that was it. Like, that's a very kind of limited thing. What's interesting about Xbox now, it's turning to a service you pay monthly for. And companies love recurring revenue streams. It's just much easier to bet on that money coming in and stuff, right? I think that's what really kind of saved it as a business and why it'll keep going. Have you heard of any rumors of Microsoft expanding their alliances outside of US to offer true Microsoft Store experiences like in Best Buy, like in Latin America? No, and I wouldn't count on it.
In some places in Europe and in the UK, for example, there's some retail chains that do have dedicated Microsoft sort of areas which do have all the Surface pieces on them. They're not huge, and then they don't have a dedicated salesperson and stuff, but it's the closest thing to a Microsoft store outside of the actual Microsoft store in London, which probably isn't going to last much longer, I don't think.
Do you see Copilot helping the development of Xbox games as Copilot signature games? Not necessarily. I wouldn't say they call it Copilot signature games, but or maybe they could. I definitely think there's two things. One, games could be AI enhanced. In other words, there's an AI, like an agentive AI that assists you with the game or does things for you or helps explain things while you're playing it, which is definitely a lot of potential. The other big upside for gaming and AI is actually like frame generation, right? This idea of like, right now we're limited in the graphics of gaming literally by the GPU and to a lesser extent the CPU. But as we're noticing now, like AI and having an NPU can generate a lot of that and do a lot of prediction or generate novel graphics and experiences on the fly, right? So every time you go play a level, it's somewhat different. Or typical NPCs have much more personality to them and actually behave like real kind of people when you talk to them versus canned for responses, type experience. It'll be interesting, I think, to watch to see if I can't imagine this, but you would think that the new Xbox hardware, when it comes out, would have an NPU for this task, right? So, like I said, I think AI in gaming is going to be really massive for enhancing the experience, because I think you're going to be able to get better graphics without jacking up the GPU, which, if you think about it, allows them to keep pricing really low, right? Because the whole thing with the console market is pricing. You got to hit that $399 mark, right? Yeah, they could put in something that's like a 5090 compatible GPU into these things, but the 5090 is going to be like $2,000, right? But if you can augment that with AI, and an NPU, like, you get a big advantage there without jacking up the cost of the console. And that's a really interesting thing. So there's a lot of potential for AI, along with AI cloud gaming. We already know a lot of games require connection to the internet. They can download content, stuff like that, but you can do a lot more with AI and cloud at the same time. Could really just improve the gaming experience. You think of something like Red Dead Redemption 2, right? With its massive open world concept, right? That stuff is going to be really enhanced, I think, with AI abilities. So I think it's something to watch.
What's the latest with Recall? Is still for insiders, right? Do you know when it's going public? I don't have a definitive date for it, but I think probably April, May time, I think might be probably a good guess for when the Recall stuff might start shipping to production. It would be nice if it was sooner. I guess maybe February could be a possibility, but actually no, or March. But I think May is probably more likely. I think it needs a couple more months of testing first.
Do you think the solid state laptop fan is the next haptic trackpad? Taptic, HA, sorry. But yes, I hate to be standardized. So we didn't really cover this, but I did get a briefing on it and everything like that, because it really is a big deal. It's a company whose name I always forget. Ventiva, yes. Ventiva have invented a technology that is a fanless fan, basically, venting system. It uses a wire and like two metal bars, and it sends electricity through that wire, and it creates polarization, and it's enough that it can create like an ionization effect and actually cause air to flow. And it's not like super powerful, but like they showed me how it works, and they do a smoke test, and you can see it blasts out the kind of smoke from it. Like, so it's enough, and it's really tiny. It's about the size of your pinky, like both in like complete size, right? And they can make it a little bit longer, and they can make it a little bit shorter, which is cool. But what's neat about it too is because of the size, there is a bigger component that goes to it with the for the electricity aspect and kind of the circuitry. So you still need that, but you would be able to, in a laptop, put like 3 of these things. So of course you'd have the one in the rear, but you can put one that blows over your RAM, and then like one blows from the CPU, and or you can even just channel the air through the system by placing these things strategically. It's really amazing technology. It's going to take a couple years to come out. I believe Dell is going to be one of the first ones to do so with it. I think when you combine that with the low wattage chips that we have that are naturally kind of staying cooler, it's going to be a beautiful marriage. It's very impressive technology. I think but here's the only issue with it right now. And while it's going to take a couple of years, you would literally need to redesign the entire motherboard for your laptop. So say Dell wants to put in the XPS 13. They can't just pull out the fans and drop these things in. It's not like that. It takes up a lot less space than the fans, which is the benefit there. But they would need to redesign the entire board and rethink everything because it gives them way more options. Like, because these things are smaller, they could put in now a larger battery, or they can put in a bigger GPU, right? They can have more flexibility there. They also just need to think about the wiring, where they're going to put these things and all that. So that's the only issue. Like, when you see like the new XPS 13 come out, or new Lenovo Yoga, like, and it's just a chip upgrade, right? They didn't really do much. They literally soldered on a new chip. They might have moved one or two things around, but it's been the same board otherwise. This is going to require companies to completely redesign the internals of the laptop before it goes to market, and that's a big deal. So that's the only thing that's going to slow them down a bit. But I definitely think you'll start to see this stuff trickle out by the end of 2025. And yeah, like haptic touchpads, you'll see a couple devices here and there with it. I think it would be awesome in Surface. It's a perfect device for that kind of thing. But yeah, Ventiva, really interesting technology. That's, I think, will be a game changer.
All right, with that, I think we can probably head off. So yeah, thank you for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back next Thursday at the same time. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.